about what is happening in Asia as a region for higher education, okay? From comparative perspective. So the focus is still going to be on Asia, but I will also use other examples to show you what is happening. Okay? A quick agenda. First, we need to talk about some concepts for regionalization. Then I have to talk a little bit about Europe, because often they are seen as the model or the example for higher education when it comes to region. And then focus on Asia, and then a little bit on other parts of the world. Okay? So why do we study regions? Your entire course is on regions. Who cares? Any ideas?
They have some easy, relatable, so they're very similar, so certain regions are very similar.
Okay, some regions, some members are very similar, right? Okay, anything else?
Yeah, you can say Chinese. Dr. Jelly can understand your Chinese. Or Taiwan.
Or Taiwan. Yes. Okay, so one of the reasons to study regions is to learn about what is happening in other places. Anything else? Okay, I will give you what I think are three main reasons. When we do comparative research in at least social science, often we focus on country level. Okay, we call it nation state or country. So for example, we can compare democracy in South Korea compared to Taiwan. We can compare student achievement in Germany and US. These are often very typical comparisons. Okay? There are problems with this. They call that methodological nationalism. We cannot forget our classes are always about countries, right? But there is already a lot of things happening at the regional level. So how do we study that? That is a problem. What is a region? Right? So now increasingly more research and more interest in region as a unit of analysis. Okay? I want you to talk to the person sitting next to you. What are the differences? Are they the same or are they different? Because in the rest of the presentation, I will use these words very often. So I'll give you 1-2 minutes. Talk to the person sitting next to you. Are these the same or are these different?
跟隔壁的讨论一下。
Okay. Anyone would like to tell me what a region is? What is a region? Okay, a place or an area. A very common definition, yes. Okay, anything else? Good. Probably everyone agrees. What about regional? No? Okay, regionalism.
Maybe a certain characteristic that is specific to a region.
Okay. Okay.
Regionalism is like a school of thought where you think of using policies in one region.
Okay, so it's a way of thinking. This is very important. Okay. Anything else? Regionalization. Okay, it makes different countries come together closer. I would emphasize the making. Anything else? Internationalization. No? Globalization. Every part of the globe, linking. So this is a common term we hear outside literature, also outside, research, right? We use the word globalization in our everyday talk sometimes. Okay, can you give me an example of a region?
Maybe Bavaria,
Bavaria, why?
because it's not country specific. It's not country specific. It's a region outside of borders.
Bavaria. Oh, okay, in Germany.
In Germany.
Okay, Bavaria is a section of Germany. Okay, any other examples? Okay, I will give you a quick review of what is happening. Region is often a physical area, right? East Asia, it's common. Regional is just an adjective. Regional policy, regional agreement, regional project, right? Regionalism is what Angela had just said. It's about ideology, thinking. We believe if we integrate, we will increase trade, right? It's a thinking. Regionalization is an action. North American Free Trade Agreement, where I live, US, Canada, Mexico, that is an actual example of regionalization. Okay. Internationalization, you have to remember the word comes from nation, right? So the country is still very important. WTO membership is based on country. United Nations, the Taiwan, is based on countries. If you're not a country, you cannot join. Taiwan, right? Olympics, based on country. When you get on an airplane, you have to show your passport based on the country. This is a kind of internationalization. When we move to this level, this is higher level, okay? It does not matter about the country. Less important. I give an example of terrorism. Now it affects many, many, many countries, right? The border is not so important. It is spreading. AIDS, diseases. That's another example. Greenpeace, right? Global warming, environment. These are global issues. Refugee is another issue. So here's some examples of what's happening because of globalization. Okay? If you look at what people are writing and researching about region, old regionalism, remember the belief? The old belief is that regional integration can increase trade. If we get together, our trade can increase, right? Nations, countries should play a small role. They should be small and the region should be important. That's Asia, right? That is the old thinking. The newer thinking is that trade and security are not the only issues. There are other problems: environment, health, pollution, ethnic identity. So these are important. Non-state actors are people who are not governments. So regional, all of them talk about governments, but this is also organizations like Greenpeace. Right? So these are also. So this thinking has changed. If you look at 1950s and 1960s. Why did I put my title as regional dimension? I did not call this regionalization. Because some of the examples I will show you has nothing to do with regionalization. Okay? In my belief, it is not at that high level. I will use some of these abbreviations. So in case you wonder, higher education institution is a university or college. And education hub, I will explain later, is a kind of project. Now, let's look at higher education. So there's a person, Jane Knight, who looks at this in different ways. She believes there are 3 different types. Okay? The first type is function. So it's about harmonization. Universities or countries trying to match their education system. That's harmonization. Student exchange, you go to another country to study. Joint degrees between 2 countries or 2 universities. This is all about function, right? The other is to build an organization to coordinate the region. Asian Development Bank is located in Bangkok, Thailand. That is the example. Okay. Political is often not, I would say not in higher education, but more in economics and government regulation. So when you see the examples, you can begin to apply this model. What is this? I asked you this. You don't need to answer it now, but think about it. Do you think regionalization is promoting globalization? Or do you think it is inhibiting, blocking globalization? Right? Because region is smaller than the globe. Globe is big, so is the region blocking globalization? Okay, we look at higher education. The best example for regionalization in higher education has always been Europe. You may know that the European Union was started quite a long time ago. It is about many activities. One of the activities is called Bologna. Bologna is a city in Italy, and they decided, education ministers in Europe decided to collaborate. Okay, these are the member countries. Look at how it has spread, including where I am today. We have signed Bologna. We are not part of Europe. We have signed this agreement. This region is spreading. Okay? Now, today, it has 48 members, countries. Okay. The focus, they want to make all the degree systems the same. The bachelor is how many years? Master how many years? PhD. Right. Then they want to improve quality of higher education by talking to each other, collaborating. Because there are many European countries, they want to allow people to work in different countries. And if you want to work in different countries, you have to recognize that degree. Right? If I am an Italian and I go to Germany and I want to work, they will say, well, where is your bachelor degree? And they can say, oh, we recognize the bachelor degree. So this is Bologna process. Because of Bologna, they also say we now have European higher education area. Again, it covers pretty much the same countries, and they are doing a lot of research together. there's funding, there's same system, same policy. This is what we call harmonization, right? Be the same. So these are just some of the values important for European higher education area. They want free movement of students. So you can do a lot of student exchange, study at different universities. Main goal is to increase staff student mobility and to improve employability, to go to different countries to work. I give you another example from Europe. It's called Erasmus Mundus program. Okay? And in a group, this is what it is, a consortia. If your university want to apply here, you need to have minimum of 5 universities from at least 3 European countries. And you have to have universities from outside Europe. This is becoming very complicated. This is no longer about Europe. This is Europe and the world. Okay? They also provide scholarships. If you're Taiwanese and you want to study at Erasmus Mundus program, there's actually a lot of money to support you to study in Europe. Here's an example. Master's degree program in higher education. 3 semesters at Norway. Your first 3 semesters. Your final semester, you have to go to a partner institution. You notice one is not Europe. South Africa. And then you will get a degree from Europe at the end. Very interesting model. Another European project, tuning. You know what's tuning? What's Chinese tuning? Right? Like if you have a piano and someone has to fix it, so it's called tuning project, right? When you hit it. So Europe is now going outside Europe, and they say, Europe, to other universities in the world, to develop outcome-based learning. So I give you an example. Let's say I am studying the degree in Taiwan, mechanical engineering. And then, how do I know mechanical engineer bachelor degree learn the same material as a mechanical engineer in Italy? It could be very, very different. Europeans have said, we will come and tell you what we think are requirements to graduate with a bachelor degree in mechanical engineering. And Taiwan said, oh, that's a good list. Maybe we can adopt that list. So the mechanical engineer from 2 countries receive the same similar training. This is called tuning. Europe is becoming very powerful. Right? So I give you the example. This is Europe and something outside Europe, X, whatever X is. I call this extra-regional partnership. The region is not outside. Look at the list of projects under tuning. Tuning USA, tuning Russia, tuning Africa, tuning China. Surprisingly, China is participating. Tuning Africa is Europe and all of Africa. We would call this inter-regional, between 2 regions. Like international, between countries, this is inter-regional. Okay. 2 big items. Quality of higher education is a big problem now, as you know. So many countries want to improve the quality of higher education. And in Asia, they created a group, Asia Pacific Quality Network. 37 members from 17 countries. So these members are often quality assurance groups. Okay? It is not organized by the government. It is completely voluntary and from the bottom, not from the top. Top is from the government, right? And they want to improve the quality of higher education in Asia. This is an example of organizational regionalization. They are building a new organization to control regionalization. Right? Taiwan is actually a member. There are 2 members coming from Taiwan. So they participate in meetings. Okay, Europe and Asia. Europe is very interested in working with Asia. So instead of one European country, one Asian country, now it is all of Europe and all of Asia. This is again inter-regional. Right? So there are different activities that are happening, and you can see. Campus Asia. So a lot of universities are interested in student exchange. We send you 10 students, you send us 10 students. Right? So these 3 countries have started something. Now it is started by the Prime Minister. It's not started by the Education Minister. So the Prime Minister and the Chinese President said, this is very good, and we should agree to more student exchange. Okay? It is only about student exchange. No complicated agreement, just student exchange. It is not about making 2 education systems the same. So this is not the same as European approach, right? Europe wants you to be the same degree system, same degree structure. This is just exchanging students. I would call this functional, strictly a function of regionalization. Okay? But let me ask you, do you think 3 countries is regionalization? Do you think this represents Asia? No? These are big and important countries, but there are many, many more. Right? But the agreement is only 3 people. What if it is 2 people, 2 countries? Would you think that's regionalization? No. So be very careful, right? Some people already criticize that this is very small. It is a big country, yes, but many countries are excluded. India is nowhere near. Right? The other problem with this is that, as you know from history, these are 3 former enemies. So some people think this is a very strange arrangement. Why are the 3 together? And sometimes they are very stubborn. We will do this way. So you will accept or you don't. So this project is actually having some problems. One of my students did a very interesting comparison on Bologna compared to Campus Asia. Right, the last project I just told you. So Bologna is very big, Campus Asia very small. Okay. Both are planned, heavily planned by both countries, or all the countries. But in her view, Bologna is reacting because Europe is afraid that it will be not as competitive as US. So they need to be together, right, to compete against US. But in Campus Asia, there is no interest to get together to compete. China is very independent and very proud. So they are not participating because they are afraid of competition. Right? And then in Bologna, very top. Both are top down. In this, it is very internal. Education ministers agree. This, the prime ministers agree. So it's external. Someone outside is telling education to collaborate. You know this organization? Yes. So in Southeast Asia, already a long time ago, 1967, they created a group, okay, to promote collaboration and integration. At that early time, there's no discussion about education. It is economic. let's look at what happens in education. So these are the member countries in Southeast Asia. This is a very common example coming from Asia. They created an organization to study, research, and coordinate higher education. Simeo Region is based in Bangkok, and they provide also some training and try to improve higher education in all the different countries. So what kind of, this would be organizational, right? They build a new organization to coordinate this. They also created a university network in 1995. So they say they want to promote studies on Southeast Asia. For example, a master's degree on Southeast Asia, history, culture. They want to do more master's and PhD program together between different countries. More research projects, and then to allow faculty to move and teach in different countries. Okay. Any questions so far? Lots of them, yes.
I was just wondering if the Asian University Network Asian Corporation, Southeast Asian Corporation, was reactive or proactive.
I'm not sure I know the details of that one, because I think you would then have to understand how in the early beginnings they started. This network, I believe, in the early beginning was quite exclusive. They said you have to be the best universities in Southeast Asia. And some people criticize that, well, that excludes a lot of universities. Right? So what is the goal? Is the goal to promote the best higher education in Asia, or is it to collaborate so we learn from each other? I don't know. Right? Any questions? Yes. Which one? Functional? Or? No. Yeah. Global. And there's only between two. Sometimes it's very narrow. It's just between two. I don't know if that's your question. Not always. Sometimes they only interested in each other. I mean, the other term, I mean, they use this in political science, bilateral. If it's only between two countries, it has nothing to do with region. It is by two countries. China, Japan, right? Okay, these are some universities in Southeast Asia that participate in this. So, quite interesting to see what they're trying to do. One of the problems here is that the universities in Southeast Asia, the level and the quality are extremely different. So if you try to make a group, there could be extremely different interests, abilities, right? So this is a challenge. I will now talk a little bit about education hubs. Education hubs, I did a lot of research on this for my PhD. Education hubs are national policies. Okay, so they plan the whole country to specialize in higher education. And they want to serve local people and foreign Some call them regional education hub. Some call them international education hub. Lots of confusion about what is what. So I'll give you some examples. Now, this is regional dimension. This is not regionalization. This is one country trying to dominate a region, maybe. Trying to be the top of the region. So it's not about collaborating to be, to have a group. Some people consider there are 10 education hubs in the world. They are all trying to specialize in higher education and recruit international students. Okay. In another map, they also claim Taiwan is trying to be an education hub. I don't know about that. I haven't heard that. But you see, depending on which maps you're looking at, it changes. Taiwan, in my understanding, has no plan. It has just talked about being an education hub, but no plan, no policy, no strategy. Okay. So I studied, my research was from Hong Kong, Malaysia, Singapore. And all three places have a lot of experience building education hubs. In the case of Hong Kong, it's a strange situation. You know it is not a country. It's really a city, right? But the whole city wants to specialize to become an education hub. And when you ask them, what is your target? What is your interest area? Who are you serving? It is this region. Pearl River Delta. I don't know what's a Chinese word. So as you know, Hong Kong is located here, and when I interview these people, they say we are very tiny, and Shanghai is developing very quickly. So what is Hong Kong going to do in the future? We could disappear, we could suffer, right? So they said we will specialize in higher education. And to serve all the companies and students in this region. They don't talk about region, they talk about Pearl River Delta. Okay? But you have to understand, this is now a sub-national region. Like the case of Bavaria and Germany. Most political scientists, most international relations people talk about region as groups of countries. This is not really the region for political science. It is a small area of a huge country. So sometimes, depending on who you talk to, they say, oh yes, regional development, regionalization. And they talk about one country, inside one country. And you're talking about different things. Right? Why is Hong Kong, what's Hong Kong's advantage? I will tell you, Hong Kong is quite well known for its higher education. If you look at universities in Asia, Hong Kong is very high ranking. Right? Several universities, top quality, higher education. Their advantage, they also have Chinese and British culture. It is not strictly Chinese. So people are attracted. I can go and do my bachelor degree, learn English, and remain within Chinese society. Right? I can go to China if I'm a Chinese student. I can go to Hong Kong and get a degree because it is very close to my home. I don't have to go to Australia. I don't have to go to the US. I can get a top quality degree in Hong Kong. The city, as you know, is very international. Much more than I think. Personal safety, crime is not really a problem in Hong Kong. It's generally very safe. So these are attractions. Malaysia. So I spent some time in Malaysia. Malaysia is a large country, and its neighbor Singapore is here. This entire region in southern Malaysia is called Iskandar. They are developing it as an economic zone. Okay? Within the economic zone, there are themes. Is it manufacturing? Is it IT? Whatever it is. One of the zones is education. Very strange. Okay? So in Iskandar, zone B, look at the number of universities they've included. invite the foreign universities to come and create a campus. So I can be a student in Malaysia and get a degree from Newcastle Medicine, which is from UK. I never have to go to UK. You can be a Vietnamese student and go study there, closer to your home than UK. Right? So who are they trying to serve? What is their region? I would say their region is really southern Malaysia, Southeast Asia. Okay? They're not trying to be, an education hub for all of the world or all of Asia. They are trying to be a hub for their neighbors. The region.東南亞, to be specific. Not even East Asia. They're not trying to recruit Taiwanese students. Okay? In many of their policies, if you look at the CNR, they always advertise, look, we are 2 hours away from flying here. We are 4 hours from flying here. So this is an advantage. Please come and study here. I want to now talk about region not as a physical area. This is quite interesting. In many policies and discussions, they say we will be a regional education hub. And my interview question is, which region? And sometimes they are confused. Okay? I would say some people, policy in education ministry, think of region as not a physical area. Okay? Here's an example. Malaysia is recruiting specifically students from Islamic countries. Okay? Islamic countries are not just in Asia. There are Islamic countries in Africa, Middle East, right? So when they recruit, they cannot say we prefer Islamic students, but they do a lot of activities with Islamic countries. Okay? Malaysia is also trying to be Islamic finance education hub. So Islamic finance is a very different kind of banking. Regular banking says, you can earn interest, you can take a risk, right? Islamic banking has restrictions. And it's a whole separate banking business, industry. They need to train people. It's not just in Malaysia. In Saudi Arabia, Qatar, many countries have Islamic banking. So how are you going to be an accountant or banker for Islamic banking? You can go to Malaysia and study. Malaysia is also very interested to be a leader among developing countries. They know they are middle income. They have been economically, in the last few decades, actually quite successful. Right? So they go to other developing countries and say, you can look at us as an example. We can help you. Developing countries is not just your neighbors. Developing countries is everywhere in the world. Right? So you see, region is no longer a physical area. Okay? I would say they're interested to be a regional leader using culture. We are Islamic. We are middle income. Generally moderate, so it's not extreme Islam, and based on ethnicity religion. It's a kind of regional identity. Okay, this is a very long quote. I will only focus on the beginning. This is an interview with someone who works at Singapore's Intellectual Property Office. What is intellectual property? So if you make an invention, you apply for a patent, right? So these are the people. So they say Singapore as a hub is not about physical Singapore, but the role of Singapore as a concept where we can be sufficiently neutral for this transaction to take place. So they say, we know Singapore will not be number one in many things, but we can be a good location for you to study, for you to do business. Everyone will come to Singapore. Right? And the comparison was to Square, Harbor Square. There's an area in Boston where many students go to drink coffee, to chit chat, nothing It says when you go there, you see nothing. People play chess, go to bookshops, and have coffee. Nothing is being created. But it is a place for people to interact and exchange ideas. This is very typical of Singaporean thinking. We may not have the best inventions, but we can help you. And we can cultivate your help. Again, Singapore, as you know, very tiny country, trying to play a regional role for Asia. And you may know, among their neighbors, Singapore is highly developed and extremely rich. So their neighbors often look at them as an example. Singapore now talks about being innovation capital. This involves a lot of education, universities, high schools. And it says we will generate new intellectual property, which will bring revenue, money into the country. If you think about innovation as valuable IP, so Singapore is very commercial. Singapore Inc. That's what they call it. So, Singapore is, as I said, very tiny. Sometimes I ask them, well, what do you think are the advantages, right? And I think this is an interesting quote from someone from an economic development board in Singapore. This is a person who designed a lot of their education planning. He said, everyone can do research. You can't beat China or India in research. No Western country can beat them. They can pump out more PhDs than you have university students. You can't beat volume. Neither can we. So they know they are small, but they know they can play a different role, right? They're not trying to compete in terms of innovation, but they're trying to compete as a neutral place for everyone to come. Okay, now I will move a little bit to Central Asia. This is a region that is often forgotten. I live there right now. Okay, so I would say this is a typical map when we think of Asia, right? When you think of Asia, you think of this. In reality, this is Asia, right? So Central Asia here, often we forget about it. So I'll tell you a little bit about what is not the truth. This is Central Asia. These are the countries that are considered Central Asia. The biggest one is Kazakhstan, where I live right now. And this is the capital city, Astana. Regional activity. 16 years ago, they built University of Central Asia. This is an agreement between three countries, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, and Aga Khan Foundation. Do you know what is this foundation? Why would a foundation spend money to build a university? Three governments, national government, and one foundation. This is where the money is coming from. Why a foundation? This foundation is religious. It is Muslim-based, but very moderate, progressive Muslim, I would say. They spend a lot of money on education and culture. Okay. They do a lot of development work. This is the Aga. It's global. The foundation has, including in Canada, they also do activities in Canada. Aga Khan Foundation. You can try to Google it. Okay. The university has 3 campuses in 3 countries. This is strange. It's not one campus. 3 countries signed an agreement, 3 locations. Now the 3 locations are in the mountain areas. It is not in the city area. And so people say, why do you build a university in a far place? Because the interest is to do economic development. So the rural area is not as developed, so if we put a university there, it will help their students and it will develop the region. Okay? There was a video, but it doesn't work. Kazakhstan formerly was part of the Soviet Union. It became independent in 1991. And after it became independent, it found oil. Total miracle. The country became extremely rich. So even though economically it is developing, it has a lot of money. It is the largest country in Central Asia. The most developed, if you go to that region, Central Asia, it is the most developed country. It is Muslim society, most people are Muslim, but the state is secular. You know secular? Yes, excellent. Politics and religion are separate. So even though 90% of the people are Muslim, the government is not religious. This is not the same as Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is a religious state. Okay, I give you an example in higher education. My university, some students who are Muslims say we want a group for praying. Right? You know, Muslims they pray often every day. Universities say no, we're not interested. By law, we are secular. We are not religious. We don't care if the students are 80% Muslim. That is not a university issue. Area is 75 times Taiwan. 30% of where I live. 30% of Canada. The population is 74% of Taiwan. A strange ratio. 17 million people. Okay. I work at this university called Nazarbayev University. It was built 6 years ago. The president built it. The president named it after himself. So Nazarbayev is the name of the president. Okay. We have approximately 3,000 students. Every student is fully funded by the government. Free tuition, free living, free housing. This is, you never hear about this in higher education. This is a dream. It's impossible. Even in Germany, where higher education is free, you still pay a little bit. And Germany is not going to pay you for a living. You go find your own apartment. Right? So it's a very unique model of higher education. We also have some scholarships for students from Central Asia. Because if you are in a region, and your country is not very developed, you want to go to a more developed country to study education. We have 340 professors, 80% are foreign, such as myself. We come from 45 countries. A very interesting place to work. So the mission of Nazarbayev University, you look at it, to promote development of education, research in Kazakhstan, and to develop Astana, the city, as a research education center of Eurasia. Eurasia is the same as Central Asia. Okay. So far, I would have to say we are not there yet, but the idea, you can see where they are going. They want to build this university to serve Central Asia. And of course, if you compare to other universities in Central Asia, it has the most resources. In our university, we use 3 different languages. Every document is in 3 languages. Can you imagine the paper? My job contract is in 3 languages. I have to sign 3 times. But we teach in English. We teach completely in English. Okay. We are independent, which is what autonomous means. We are independent, unlike other universities in the country. Even though we are funded by the government, we have a lot of freedom. Okay. Other universities have to report to the ministry. We also, but less. this is our first graduation last year. So university is only 6 years old, right? The first group, bachelor's students graduated, they need 4 years minimum, right? So they graduated last year and the president showed up. So this is the country's president. This is the university president, who is Japanese. He worked at a World Bank as a vice president and then became our university president. Our strategic partners. So we have strong partnerships with these universities. It's not just on paper. The partnerships are very close. So they help us with developing curriculum, hiring professors. Sometimes they approve some thesis, they grade some thesis. So I am in education. Our partner is these two, Cambridge and UPenn, and the other schools have other partners. So this is the international. Quickly, a few slides. What is happening in other places in the world? I've only talked mostly about Asia. Africa is starting to do a lot of regional activities in higher education. So the African Union is quite active, and these are some other projects. So again, it is not 1, 2, or 3 countries, it is multiple countries. Okay? Maybe not always all of Africa, but many countries. Latin America, this section has an economic trading area, and they are doing some activities of higher education. But this is very early, okay? I would say compared to Africa, maybe even less activity. After Europe, Bologna, Asia is probably more active in regionalization. This is a strange partnership. These countries have decided to come together because of Marxist ideas. You know Marxism. So Venezuela is the leader in this group. And as you may know, their former president was very much Marxist. And so their partnership is about Marxist ideas. Equity, free education for everyone. That is the goal. So just to summarize, when you talk about region, some people talk about physical area, right? We talk about some of this. It could be national, many different countries. It could be subnational, inside one country. Right? Some people talk about region as economic development. Third world countries, Malaysia is partners. Or emerging economies. In the more, this is very abstract, civilization as a region. In Hong Kong, they often talk about Chinese region or East-West region. The world has 2 types, East or West. You cannot be another type. Or Islamic, sometimes called Islamic region and non-Islamic. So more than. So what do you think? Do you think regionalization helps or blocks globalization? How many people think it promotes? I just want to see your hands. How many people think it promotes? It helps, intensify. Okay, a few people. What about inhibit? How many people? Really?
That's the reason.
Why?
Why is it?
Anyone want to offer some reason? Why do you think it inhibits globalization?
In my opinion, the regionalization only works with common characteristics. So how can globalization be included in a purely Islamic educational system or a purely Eastern?
Okay. So because you think that region has more similarity, they become closer to the outside. Maybe when a region has common things, They work with each other, but they become excluding.
Yeah, for example, the Marxists triangle. How can America ever cooperate with them?
Right. That is not a very popular group. Any other thoughts? Yes? Okay. It's hard for two regions to get together because they are competing often. You can already see this. Europe would like to compete with many regions, including China. That's actually it for my presentation. I'm open to questions. Do you have questions you would like to ask? Yes. Yeah. Okay.
In recent years, there are serious conflicts between Hong Kong and China. So I think whether or not the problems between Hong Kong and China will influence the freedom of education. That's my question.
Excellent question. I worry about the same. So, as you know, Hong Kong is becoming less free, right? And if you want to be an education hub and study there, maybe you will worry, right? It is a problem. When you look at their students who are coming from outside, they don't call them international. They call them non-local. In Hong Kong, this is the term. Non-local students. Their non-local students is like 95% from China. So it is not really international, right? And one of the concerns is that fewer people will go because it is becoming less free.
Someone say another perspective, they say it's not internationalization, they say it's Chinaization.
Yes.
It's a new term they created because of the spatial status of Hong Kong and all the non-local students they recruit from China. Because most of the non-local students are Chinese actually, from China. So they say this is a symbol of Chinaization.
Or it's a Chinese education hub.
Yeah, Chinese.
It's not regional, it is not international, it is Chinese education hub.
Okay, yeah.
My question was about Kazakhstan.
Yes.
How maybe it's because I don't know, but I thought it was an authoritarian regime, and how that was the first. Is it very limiting? The second question was, is Kazakhstan really posed to have any sort of influence in the Eurasian continent? I know that in the Central Asian, probably, but the Eurasian, I've never heard of Kazakhstan as any sort of influencing.
Okay, good question. I'll answer you backward. Eurasia is often the same as Central Asia. So Eurasia actually does not include really what we think of as Western Europe. So definitely in Eurasia and Central Asia, Kazakhstan wants to be number one. They want to be the leader of that region. That is for sure. Kazakhstan has very close relationships with both China and Russia. And they are very careful to walk this balance. Okay? In terms of freedom of speech, academic freedom, you are correct in that there is limited when it comes to what you think of as democracy. Okay, the same president has been in power 21 years. So it's not really democratic voting. And I also was worried when I arrived. But if you look at my daily work as a professor, I have actually a lot of freedom. Last month I was in China for a conference. I was in China for the very first time, and I was surprised by the lack of freedom. Compared to Kazakhstan, I was shocked. I came back to Kazakhstan thinking this is a democracy. So, yes, there are challenges, of course, but if you look at, let's look at Central Asia. Kazakhstan is actually extremely stable. In 21 years, they have continued to increase economically. No big violence, no big terrorists. So of course you can say, well, the same person has been in power, but it's actually extremely stable. In designing my classes and teaching, no one has ever come and told me you cannot talk about that. You should be talking about this, or let me approve your curriculum. No one ever said that. In my class discussions, my students are very critical. I was surprised. About education policy, about society in Kazakhstan, about gender rights in Kazakhstan. Women are discriminated in typical kind of traditional society. They're very critical.
So they couldn't get in trouble because of the critical stance.
People actually talk more openly, much more, I would say, than in China.
So you worry about maybe one day the freedom of speech and action will be reduced or
Yes.
endangered.
So the president is getting very old.
Yeah, after the new president.
There's no clear future after him. And this is the worry. Right? He has no sons, only daughters. And this is a traditional society where women are, discriminated. So can a daughter become the next president? Maybe difficult. Yes. Other questions? Yes, sort of focus on what I worry about and friends are powerful social such as China. Can you repeat that question again? What's your purpose? We as in Taiwan, or we who? Who's we?
Who going to
Elaborate. Other countries. Well, when it comes to education, Chinese education is developing very quickly. In the last 10 years, their universities have improved quite a lot. And people did not expect this also. They have some of the best scientists now. And they are now, I don't know if you know, but they are hiring Chinese scientists from US. Please come home. We will give you a high salary, a good research laboratory.
And lots of
Well, no, it's a choice. Yeah, but they are now spending money to recruit Chinese, top Chinese scientists to come back, often from US. So, in their publications, they're producing a lot of research and publications. So I don't think it's helpful to say we will ignore that. We don't want to work with you. I think there could be benefits for both sides.
You also can raise some questions in Chinese or Taiwanese.
Well, I was taught with a German student before, and it's the same age as me. And in Germany, in Europe, most of the country, their college is famous for its department. Not like some college have its famous department like medical or physics or society. But so I think that is why it's easier for Europe to
Integrate.
To integrate their bachelor, PhD, or some. But in Taiwan, we use school names to rate how the department is active in Taiwan. So, do you think it is possible for Taiwan to be like
In the group with someone else.
just like most of the college in Taiwan can integrate their study, the department study. The thing is they have to study in the department and they can like, I studied in this college and also in the same degree, same level as other colleges.
I think it is completely possible. And if I look at what is happening in Europe, I think when they integrate as a region, it is not because they are more similar. Frankly, their languages are extremely different. And because of history, sometimes they hated each other. They were fighting, if you remember. French and German, French and UK, the Brits and the French really often. Yes, and okay, so that's culture and language. In education, their systems can also be extremely different. Germany has a very old traditional system of higher education. There's a level beyond higher than PhD, which nobody in the world has. Russia has some. Most countries, the highest level is PhD. In Germany, you have more after PhD. Right? So how do you match? I think that habilitation. It means after PhD, you should do a large research project and write about it. Some people say it is harder than the PhD. And it takes many years. Okay? I think, frankly, I don't think the problem is cultural difference. I think the real problem is political will. I don't know how you say this in Chinese, but
政治的意思就是愿不愿意做这件事。
the Bologna process, Europe's agree to integrate, was signed by education ministers. And all the members countries were very strong support of integration. Okay? Even though they are very different. In the case of Taiwan, if there's no political will, forget it. I think integration will be very difficult. This is why that project, Campus Asia, China, Japan, Korea, people have said there's a lack of political will. So the project's having problems.
In general, it seems like in East Asia, ASEAN is more much better in terms of integration. But East Asia, during East Asia, they say politically it's quite impossible because of the historical conflict and war and fighting each other. So they say it is because of political will. They hate each other.
And even if we don't think about education, if we don't think about politics and history, let's forget, okay? The education systems of places like Japan and Korea are very traditional. Many people have studied it from outside, and they say many little things change. It has remained the same over many, many years. Japanese universities have a very difficult time recruiting foreign professors because they don't change. This is the Japanese way. Other questions?
Dr. Lee, I'm a grad student and I'm studying regionalization in Southeast Asia, specifically for my graduate thesis. So I have a couple of questions, but I guess for now I'm just going to ask one. You mentioned Japanese approaches, the functional, organizational, and the political approaches. I wonder if, of those three approaches, which do you think is lacking in the Southeast Asian regionalization opening, and what should be done? Is it, do we are we lacking in terms of organizational visualization or political visualization? Because at the institutional level, there are initiatives at the functional regionalizations, like exchange programs and that kind of stuff, but I'm not sure about the organizational and the political regionalizations, especially at the institutional level. Thank you.
Wow, interesting thesis. I would have to agree. I think in the Southeast Asian case, it is organizational issue. I think the functional people are very interested. I would agree with you. I think politically, I think there is also strong support from ASEAN, right? ASEAN was created from all the different countries. But I think on the organizational side, maybe they need to set up something new to organize all of this. Because there's too many countries in that group, right? Even in the group that studies higher education, Singapore originally hosted it. And then they decided we're not interested. So the center moved from Singapore to Bangkok. So it is a challenge. And in that group, Singapore sometimes can be arrogant. Because they think we are the richest, we are the most developed, why should we integrate with you?
Now they have new motivation.
Yes.
Students from other countries in the region. And money. Not reason.
The other thought I had is I think sometimes if a university at the institution level is very strong in networking, then they don't feel like they need a regional body.
Regionalization initiatives are actually initiated by the universities and DPUs. It becomes more of a bilateral, multilateral agreement with neighboring ASEAN countries rather than like a regional thing. And the question of is it bilateral now or regional?
Yeah, so be careful about how you call it, right? I mean, the Europeans, because of Bologna, created the ECT system, European credit transfer. So if I do a course in France, you get 3 credits. 3 credits is the same as 3 credits in Greece. So it's a common credit system. Asia is trying to develop this, but there are having some problems.
In the Asia, they also create a similar scheme, try to help students to be mobile within the region. You take credit from maybe in Thailand, then it can be taken to for your Asian credit in maybe Vietnam, Taiwan, or somewhere. It's problematic. Face questions.
Yes?
What is the differences between college students in Kazakhstan and Taiwan?
Where? Astana? Or Kazakhstan? Yeah.
What's the differences about college?
Well, I have never been a professor in Taiwan, so it's hard for me to give a comment, right? But I also teach graduate students. I don't teach undergraduate. At the graduate level, my students are very vocal. Many questions, many disagreements. We disagree. Why do you tell us that? And I think in the Chinese society, including Taiwan, there is less interaction between student and teacher, or challenge the teacher.
So the challenge is well.
Sometimes. Yeah.
They disagree with you about what?
About maybe my opinion of Kazakhstan or education policy.
Yeah, about the food.
About the food, yes. Taiwanese food's the best. I've lived in many countries. Anything else?
Yeah.
So, for some university markets,
上，
Muslim student.
Yes,
That's what